she became the maid of Naaman's wife. And one day she said to Naaman's wife, "Oh, if my lord Naaman could meet the prophet in Samaria, I just know that he would cure him." I may be reading in a little bit, but I can imagine when she tells Naaman this. Here's Naaman, who has access to the king and all the military powers of the land. Now he's getting this word of advice from, in his day, a woman, a child, a foreigner, a captive, a servant. I mean, are you kidding? But what are his options? He has no alternative. What's to lose? I guess it can't hurt. So he relays this to his own king, the king of Syria. And the king of Syria then sends him to the king of Israel. He sends him off with 750 pounds of gold and 150 pounds of silver, with 10 changes of clothes, if you will, and a letter of reference. He makes it official. This is king-to-king business, big stuff. So off goes Naaman with some good sense of hope up to the royal palace of the king of Israel, with the king's horses, the king's men, and the chariots, and the gifts of silver and gold, and the official letter of reference. And when the king of Israel reads the letter, he's frightened, and he feels threatened by this. And he says, "Who does he think I am, God? It's not in my power to give life or death. I can't heal this man of leprosy. What's he trying to do? Wait a minute. I think he's trying to pick a fight with me." Well, Elisha, the prophet, the one that the servant girl had referred to, heard about this and how the king of Israel was tearing his clothes over this, literally. He gets word to him and says, "Send Naaman to me." So here comes Naaman again with renewed hope. Off the second time with the whole entourage of the king's horses, the king's men, and the chariots, and 750 pounds of silver, and 150 pounds of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. He's sure that he could obtain anything he desires. He can pay for any price that someone would exact. He's a great man. And he's all set, and this is it. And he arrives at the house of Elijah, as big as can be. It's a grand appearance. But note what happens. Elisha sends out the messenger boy. And the messenger boy tells Naaman to go wash in the Jordan 7 times to be cleansed of his leprosy. And look at Naaman's reaction. He's angry. You've got to be kidding. I'm Naaman, and we could recite all of his credentials and accomplishments again. He's a great man, a very great man, has been a powerful man of great influence. And so finally, he arrives at Elijah's house, and Elisha doesn't even come out. He sends out this kid and tells him to go jump in the river, literally 7 times. Verses 11 and 12 read this way. He was angry, and he went away, saying, I thought, Naaman had this preconception of what was to happen and what it would be like. He had a plan all worked out in his mind before he ever arrived. He had it all worked out as to who, where, how, what. Who? Elisha. Not a servant boy, not a kid. Where? Elisha will come out here to me. How? He will wave his hand over the place, and what? And I will be cured instantly of my leprosy. He even added a bit of his own thinking. Hey, the rivers we've got back where I come from are much cleaner than the dirty Jordan. Couldn't I jump in those and be clean if that's the way this thing works? So he thought. And when it didn't happen according to his preconceptions, He was angry, and he went away, still a leper. It makes me wonder sometimes how many times I may have limited what God might have done in me and through me, perhaps, as a person, as a father, as a husband, as a pastor, as a neighbor or friend, except that I thought I knew the score in the first place. It makes me wonder how many times in the churches I have served, we just got so caught up in our agendas and traditions and programs and our likes and dislikes, what made us comfortable, quite sure of ourselves, and just moved on ahead based on our perceptions and preconceptions and our thoughts. We've all, I'm sure, have had times personally where we found ourselves in a jam. We're embarrassed. Perhaps we have hurts, and we have caused hurt to others. Perhaps reputations have been damaged, and we look back on it in hindsight and we say, but I thought that, and I just assumed. I mean, it just seemed reasonable to think. I think the lesson is that God does things and will do things, and perhaps even wonderful things, but maybe not quite like we might have thought, not at all like we would have done things, and maybe not at all like we would want them to be done. And we can get our thoughts so fixed ahead of time that we narrow the field of our vision and our expectations, and that's it. And maybe we need to hear again and again and again God speak to us as he does through Isaiah when he said, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. As high as the heavens are above the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." That is humbling, and at the same time, it's liberating. Our preconceived ideas, our prefixed conclusions, I think, are one of the greatest mistakes that we make in religion in general. Like we can find out God by our understanding, by our thoughts and our theories. We will discover the secrets of the Almighty. We will capture heaven. We will construct a plan for the universe, and we will hold providence in our hand. If there's anything at all about religion, it is that God is higher and greater and somehow wonderfully beyond us. That God indeed is God. And I love the way William Cowper put it when he said, God is his own interpreter. As that is the case, God will often surprise us, will act in unexpected ways. Frankly, perhaps some disappointing ways to us and our schemes, and yet sometimes in wonderful ways far beyond what we could ever have wanted or imagined. The mysteries, the wonderful ways of God and his thoughts will not be fixed by our theories of God and our projections of what we think he should be or how we might cast him. Our theories become our idols, which ultimately hide us from the true face of God. Naaman had it all preconceived. He had his thoughts all fixed. He had a program all drawn up. He even had a ceremony for it. But he had it all wrong. If we can be open and honest about our ignorance of the things that are finally beyond us, and learn to bow in humble submission to the sometimes mysterious ways of God, Naaman was angry. And he went away saying, I thought. And he was still a leper. But some of the servants that were with him, and man, I just say, thank God for the little people. When I think of this great man and how God used a servant girl, foreigner, servant to his wife, to really lead him to Elisha, and really stumbling all over the place, it took some of his servants then to say, hey, wait a minute, sir. The servant said to him, look, I know this is not what you were expecting. You were expecting Elisha himself to come out here. You were anticipating some high magisterial command and some great ceremony. If he had asked you to do some great thing, you'd have done it, right? If he had exacted some high price from you, good grief, with all you brought by way of gifts, you would have willingly paid it. All he asked you to do was wash and be clean. If that's God's way, that may be humbling, but it won't be demeaning. Why don't you just follow the direction of God and let God be God in God's own way? And so he did. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. William Cowper was right. God moves in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform. Can we take Cowper's advice this morning when he goes on, judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Blind unbelief is sure to err and scan his work in vain. God is his own interpreter, and he will make it plain.